And the
Are you
worst
doing
is
all
when
the
your own
motions today? And
dogs are
Maribel's
allergic
doing
to
second?
Yeah, I'm gonna try until I have to
Maribel's
leave.
second, or what?
Uh-huh.
It was Rich? Okay.
Okay.
We gotta
I'd like to
handle them.
call this to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Commission of March 27th, 2024. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, is available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. If you've parked in the parking lot across the street to the north, the gate is open and no parking coupons are needed. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff's cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. The Planning Commission action today is final on the following items. 1.3, Special Permit 24003. 1.4, Special Permit 24004. And 1.5, Special Permit 24006. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filling a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or the County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held March 13th, 2024.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second, Cruz.
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
sorry, Fight,
Not my name. Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Being after.
Joy.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
Thank you. We will now proceed with today's agenda. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Shelley to read all of the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there's anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. This item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, can you please call the items on the consent agenda?
First item, item 1.1, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 24003, to review as to conformance with the 2050 Lincoln Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, the East Gateway Mall Redevelopment Plan, a proposed guide for redevelopment activities within the redevelopment area consisting of approximately 58 acres, generally bounded by O Street to the south, North 66th Street to the east, Deadman's Creek to the north, and North 63rd Street to the west, generally located in North 66th and Q Streets. Item 1.2, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 24004, to review as to conformance with the 2050 Lincoln Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, a request to declare city property as surplus on property generally located at 10th and N Streets. Item 1.3, Special Permit 24003, to allow the sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises on property generally located at 2301 Northwest 12th Street. This is a final action to City Council. Item 1.4, Special Permit 24004, to allow for the sale of alcohol for consumption on property generally located at 2949 North 27th Street. This is a final action to the City Council. Item 1.5, Special Permit 24006, to allow for an early child care facility on property generally located at 4530 A Street, and this is also final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
No.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items, please stand and state that item.
I'd like to speak quickly about 1.2.
1.2, Shelley.
Okay. That'll be for public hearing.
Okay, so 1.2 will now be moved to section 3 for public hearing. May I entertain a motion?
I move to approval of the consent agenda.
Second, Cruz.
Thank you.
Ball,
Okay.
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Consent agenda approved, 7-0.
Now I will ask Shelley to call the request for deferral.
We have received written communication on behalf of the applicant requesting that item 2.1A, County Changes Zone 24002, and associated item 2.1B, County Preliminary Plat 24001, be placed on pending at this time until further notice, rather than being delayed for 2 weeks as originally noted.
I need a motion as well.
Yes,
I
please.
move approval of the deferment.
Second, Cruz.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on these applications at this time? No? Thank you. We will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and/or included as part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name, address, and have 5 minutes to speak unless the additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided. The clerk will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. The red light indicates that your 5 minutes has expired. Once the final minute has lapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
This will be item 1.2 that was pulled from the consent agenda, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 24004, which is to review as to conformance with the 2050 Lincoln Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, a request to declare city property as surplus on property located at 10th and N Streets. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
No.
Steve Hendrickson with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. If we can get the laptop up here on the screens, we can show this application here. This is between N Street and O Street, east of 10th Street. This is adjacent to the southern portion of the Golds Building, which was recently demolished. This property, I think, for years functioned like an alley, but was actually not part of the alley. So it was city-owned property.
Not coming up.
Well,
Technical difficulties. It's the only tricking.
well, imagine, if you will, N Street, and there's the old Golds Building. It is on page 5 of the staff reports for the Planning Commission. Hopefully we'll get this up fairly soon. But it's a part that really looked like it was part of the alley, but it was actually city-owned land. That's why we're not doing a street and alley vacation, but instead doing a surplus property. This is so that it can be sold for development. We're already looking to have the adjacent property redeveloped. So that was the reason for the declaration of surplus property. Given the size of the property, We always see if some other city department wanted that. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You want to plug it into your laptop there?
Oh,
Just-
that's, I was, okay, sorry. I have this ready at least for the next item.
Yes.
Any other questions?
So
Any
does the
questions?
city own the neighboring buildings and land, or just,
No, the land to the south that was previous is privately
Okay.
and was looking at developing that at some point in the future.
okay.
Yay, for IT.
Thanks, Bo.
So yeah, as you can see, it's just basically this small piece of property. The alley is actually still technically there. It is unvacated to the north of it because that alley does serve other buildings to the north. But this building, probably most likely and most logically, would be sold to the adjacent property owner as part of that development.
You know the history of,
Go ahead.
sorry, do you know the history of how we ended up with that land? It just seems so weird to me, I had to ask.
No, I don't know the full history. I mean, given the history of how long Gold's has been there, it has been probably functionally used as part of the alley, and the city had it because it helped with trucks and was working as the alley, but legally it is not part of the alley. It is a separate lot, and
Gotcha.
it's been under city ownership.
Okay, no other questions? Okay. May I have testimony in support? Or, yes, testimony from the applicant, but we're the city's the applicant, correct? Testimony in support? Testimony in a neutral capacity? Come on up.
Right, if I hang out over here.
Yes.
Yep.
You ready for me? My name is Tyler Redwine. I actually live in the Lincoln Building, which is at 10th and O, just north of this parcel that we're talking about here. And I was primarily curious because I live in the building and I wasn't quite sure exactly what part of the map here that's shown was in question. I think that the city owns the building just to the north of this area, the former Aging Partners building. I could be correct or incorrect about that, but someone had a question about adjacent city ownership. So anyhow, to back up a little bit, the Lincoln Building is a 1911 First National Bank building that was recently converted into condos in the last 20 years. My wife and I live in one of those condos. It was actually Lincoln's first high-rise, so there's some history behind it. I actually serve as the president of the HOA for that building, so there are 50 units in the building. All of those owners kind of resort to me for today's purposes. But anyhow, I really just wanted to kind of go through a few concerns that I had around this, assumedly being the first point and a trigger, which will develop, I guess, the rest of the block around us. We are actually the only part of the block that has not been touched as a part of the Gold's demolition and what is coming here in terms of redevelopment. So I've already seen a couple of things that have come up in our building as a result of what's going on around us. Cracks and some, I don't know, probably what you could consider to be slight damage. And before we get too far down this path, I really just wanted to ask if there is a function built into this that will allow someone like us, and I guess I should probably back up and say that I've seen the Golds District website, which was put together by, I assume, the developer of this property and everything else there around the block. It looks great. Everyone in our building is super excited about what's coming. But kind of considering what's happened here over the last couple of months with the demolition of Golds and what is assumedly coming based on the pictures that I can see on the Golds District website, I don't know if there's a mechanism for us to be able to have constant monitoring of our property as things are developed around us, so that we can kind of isolate and kind of figure out what has happened as things have happened. So if any remedies need to be resolved, who's responsible, and everyone's aware of those kind of up front. So that was my first question that I wanted to make sure that you guys were considering. There is also part of our building. Our building is pretty much just a rectangular shape, but you can see on the map there that there is a little bit of a cutout where our roof drops down below the top 8th story level down to what is the 2nd story level. And right now we have 7 HVAC units that live on that lower roof that are not accessible by anything in our building. The only way we can get to those units for maintenance are through the building next door. So I don't know whoever is planning that development, if they're considering that, but I want them to. And then lastly, like I said, based on what I've seen from the designs for what's coming potentially around us, there are some of our windows which will be occluded on the east side of our building. And I don't know what the mechanism looks like for that, around potentially compensating the owners who are affected by that or protesting, kind of how it works. So that's really all I had for comments. And like I said, I know that most of that is not related directly to the conversation today, but that's what I've got.
On the map, can you clarify which building that you live in?
Sure. I don't know if there's a way for me to point at this.
Like which rectangle? Like there's a
Black
gray one in the
roof or
middle,
white
black,
roof?
or the far left? Okay, I figured it was the far left one,
Here, and
what
then
you
can
mentioned
see
about the
our
HVAC. Yep.
Lower
Okay.
roof.
Fantastic, thank you.
We may have a few more questions for you, sir. Just a second. Anybody else have any questions before we? No? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for coming back up. Are there any other testimony in a neutral capacity or in opposition? Okay. Staff questions? Yeah.
Can I jump up? Hi, sorry. Peter Hine, Director of Urban Development with the City of Lincoln, 555 South 10th Street. It's a little outside of the surplusing question that's happening today, but I thought I would respond. I'll move over to this one so I can point a little bit. I just wanted to respond a little bit about use and purpose for this lot. As you know, the alley will remain functional. The reason for surplusing this is to be able to sell this land to the developer who has given us assurance that they will give all of the access that's needed for vaults, for LES and other utilities. I think that's a critical portion of this. The reason they want to have it is for future development, to be able to have access and control of this so that it doesn't get sold or it doesn't get developed for some other way. And the question of the east windows, or to answer the question about the aging building, which is this sort of building right here, we have just closed on that building to the same developer of the Golds building, Rev Development. And we'll check on those east windows of the Lincoln building. I'm not aware of any easements or anything that we had or they have on those windows as they are on the property line. So we'll get back to you on that and make sure that we follow up. Any other questions for me? Yeah.
Yeah, from a permitting perspective, and maybe that's not the vehicle, but access to utilities is only done through an adjacent building. So if that building to the east, I guess, gets demolished, does the access happen through permitting activities or some other vehicle?
It could be a use or an access agreement that happens there. It could be like other buildings that they actually have to access it from the top or create an access for their space because of legacy and property lines and things like that. But I'll check on that as well and see if there's any legacy agreements that we need to bring forward, for sure.
Okay. And then the question also for what function it allows them to be monitored, or is there a way for them to talk about issues that come up in their building through the process?
Yeah, I would defer to city law on that. My guess is it's agreement between the developer and the building owners there, and the city wouldn't. Tim will come up and help us.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Tim C., Assistant City Attorney, 555 South 10th. Yeah, that's a matter between private owners of these two properties. So it's not something the city is going to play a role in monitoring the construction on the. That's just the nature of having neighbors, is you have to work with them and watch out for their property when you're building.
Thanks.
Is that something public that these residents can look up who that person is so they can start that conversation?
It sounds like they've already been found the
yep.
website,
Good.
and certainly it'll be a matter of record who the owner of that property is. So.
Okay.
Anybody have anything else?
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
And Steve, as representing the applicant, do you have anything else you want to add? Nope. Thank you.
I move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second, Cruz.
Thank you. Shelley?
Hall,
Thanks.
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Veit,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Public hearing is closed.
May I have a motion?
Oh, I move the approval of Comprehensive Plan Conformance 24004.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
I just think it's a small piece of land that's of no use to the city. It just makes sense that it goes with the developer that abuts it. That just makes sense to me. I would love to know the history on it as why it ever ended up in city hands, but
Well, and it
someday.
will go back on the tax rolls.
That's a good point.
Any other comments? Okay. Shelley, let's call a vote.
Ball.
Yes.
Cruz.
Yes.
Ebert.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved, 7-0.
Excellent. Shelley, you have a note on Commissioner Edens?
Yes, before we start the next public hearing items, I will note that Commissioner Edens has declared a conflict of interest on public hearing items 4.1A through 4.1E and recused herself at this time. So we will now move to our public hearing for items 4.1A, Comprehensive Plan Amendment 24002, to amend the Lincoln Lancaster County's 2050 Comprehensive Plan to revise the Priority Growth Areas map to change from Tier 3 and Tier 1 Priority B to Tier 1 Priority A on property generally located near the intersection of North 70th Street and Interstate 80, associated with item 4.1B, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 24005, to declare surplus city-owned property also located near the intersection of North 70th Street and Interstate 80. Item 4.1C, Annexation 24002, to annex approximately 448 acres, including 314 acres for the future State of Nebraska Correctional Facility. And item 4.1D, changes zone 24004 from AG Agricultural District to P Public on property generally located between Highway 77 and North 84th Street from Interstate 80 to Bluff Road. And item 4.1E, street and alley vacation 24004, vacating McKelvey Road east of North 70th Street adjacent to property generally located at McKelvey Road east of North 70th Street. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these applications?
No.
Are there any ex parte communication that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
No.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. David Carey, Director of the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. Thank you for some time this afternoon on these items. We have 5 items that are all related. These items are related to processing the project that is the Nebraska Correctional Facility, generally located north of Interstate 80 in North 70th Street. So just want to give a brief kind of overview of it, and then John Carlson from the Mayor's Office is here to provide a presentation on this to kind of just make sure we're specifically noting what these items are and why we're doing them. So again, collectively, these come as a package. I will note that you will need to act individually on every one of them, but we're going to give the overview as one item, and then we can discuss them as one item as well. So with that, we have several items that are needed to make sure that our process is followed for this project, to have it on track, and then it can move forward. So really just going to stop there and then have John go through the information, and then we'll be available for questions as we move forward. How's that? Yep.
Good afternoon, Chair Joy and Commissioners. I'm John Carlson. I work in the Mayor's Office, 555 South 10th. I'm part of the team that's been working on this city interstate site parcel. And as David mentioned, we have 5 related actions before the Commission today. And we'll get to those in a second. Before I get there, I'd just like to remind us briefly kind of the background of the process to why we're at this part that we are today. As has been mentioned and is known, the state's decommissioning their current correctional facility near 14th and Nebraska Parkway, and they're building a new facility. I would point out that the state has jurisdiction, and they have purchased land near 102nd and Adams with an intent to locate there. They do not need permission to purchase land. They don't need permission to construct their facility. They don't need municipality permissions to do those things. However, as was noted last year, and when discussions began, the Adams site, which I'll show in a minute, is in a growth area in the comprehensive plan. It's shown for residential development as part of the Stevens Creek expansion to the east. Not particularly well suited for an institutional type of facility, something that size. So the city began discussions about a potential land exchange with the parcel that the city owns north of the interstate, that I'll also show here in a second, east of 70th Street. We feel that it's better suited for that type of an institutional facility. It's adjacent to commercial and industrial. It has public facilities that border it on several sides. So the five items today are needed to allow citing the corrections facility. They prepare the parcel that the city currently owns for potential swap with the state. The swap's not included in this right now. We're just setting the table so that the site is prepared for that. As David mentioned today, and as you've been read into, but just for the benefit of the public and people watching at home, I know that you all know what these actions are, but I'm just going to go through them real briefly. We have an annexation, which will bring the parcel into the city for services. It's currently outside the city limits. We have change of zone, which would change its AG Ag zoning to P public use zoning to show what's actually going to be used on it. We have a comp plan amendment to the future land use map that's in the comprehensive plan that will show this parcel now inside the city. We have the surplus property declaration, which means the city has talked to departments and don't have a further city municipal use for this land, so it can be declared surplus and transferred ownership in the future. And then McKelvey Road is a local service road within the site that needs to be vacated so that public right-of-way is no longer public. The state may use the road, but it won't have public access to drive onto the site. As has been mentioned, these five go to the Planning Commission before they go to the City Council. And again, as I said before, the purpose of today is to make that interstate site available for exchange with the state. That way the Adams site can continue to be developed as residential growth as shown in the comp plan, and the interstate site can be developed in a more institutional and more commercial and public use area. So where are the parcels? Just to give you a little bit of kind of geographic context here. You can see the Adams site as mentioned before. It's on the east side of town. You can see the new developments, the new residential neighborhoods that are being developed and growing in that area. It has some environmentally sensitive areas in the Stevens Creek watershed basin, the Prairie Pines area. The interstate site, in contrast, if you look to the north, has great interstate access. You've got 56th Street there. You've got 70th Street as a paved road. It's surrounded, and I'll zoom in on that in a second. But really the thing to take away from here is the parcels, while not the same shape, are essentially basically the same size, and you can see how they're suited, and it might be best to have a swap here to appropriately site the facilities. Zooming in more on the interstate side, again, as I talked about before, you can see where the location is there. You've got the 56 and I-80 access interchange right there, where you can get off the interstate. You've got 70th Street and 84th Street are both overpasses of the interstate, so there's good access there, and 70th Street is a paved road. Also, if you kind of get a bearings here, and I keep wanting to point because I can't point with the cursor, but directly to the east of the site, you can see on 56th Street or Highway 77, that's the city solid waste operations area. The land in between is also owned by solid waste. That's a 50-year, 70-year additional parcel for the city to continue to grow. As they fill up areas in the landfill, they cover and seed and cover them up, so they only have open cells and active cells at a time. Immediately to the north is actually the Terry Bundy LES power station, another institutional use to the north, so directly surrounded. And then the part that will remain to the east is still city-owned land. It has, again, a water and a draw running through there. It's not particularly well suited to development, but again, provides a buffer for more institutional use. South across the interstate, if you go more towards 56th Street, that's a commercial industrial area. The new Camping World is sited in there. There's some other places in there too. So the five actions, I'm just going to run through them here as we go through to kind of explain what's happening, both for the commission and for the viewing public. So first, annexation. As you can see here in the tan, I don't know how it shows up on the screen, but in the tan area is outside the city limits. The part that's not tan is the current city limits. So then we need this parcel then to touch the city limits so that it can be annexed in. The question is, what's the best pathway to do that? Our proposal is to actually do that across city land. So that landfill expansion area is already owned by the city. These rights-of-ways for the interstate and for 70th Street are also publicly owned land. So we'd make the annexation so it touched again to that commercial area and that industrial area that's south of the interstate so that nobody else's parcels are involved in an annexation. Sometimes people want to be annexed, sometimes they don't want to be annexed. In this circumstance, no one's affected. It's just the city property that's being brought in with as a result of the annexation. There's the actual legal map that's in your packet. Mine was just kind of a demonstration, but you can see there again, it's got the parcel, it's got the interstate right-of-way, 70th Street right-of-way, and then that lower southern part of the future landfill expansion area. Change the zone, as I mentioned before, this is all ag zoned land, so that'll be changed from AG to P. Technically, as I said before, it's not necessary. The state doesn't need zoning in order to conduct their operations. but it makes sense from an academic point of view to go ahead and show the zoning that's for what's actually happening on the parcel. And to that point, what's in your packet also, under that same rationale, while we're out here, since these city uses have been out there for decades and actually zoned AG, we're going to take the opportunity here to rezone them P to again accurately reflect that the solid waste operations and the Terry Bundy Power Plant are actually P public operations, and so they'll all be appropriately zoned too. We're amending the comp plan again to move the future land use map to show that this parcel is now going to be inside of the city. Similar to what we had before, we have a little bit of cleanup that can be done out there too. So the area that is the interstate site and the lower part of the southern area of the solid waste operations, that's the part that we are bringing into the map. There's this sliver on the east and this sliver on the west of the intersection. They're currently shown in the map, and I'm not exactly sure why. Planning can follow up later on that if you need to know why, but as part of a cleanup, we're going to be taking those out and putting the parcel in so the map actually accurately reflects what's coming in and what should be coming in. Surplus property, again, I'm showing you the same parcel over and over again, but it's 5 actions on the same property. Surplus property boundary, again, follows that parcel that we talked about. It'll remain in public use as a future corrections location. There is, hard to see on this map, but there are some LES overhead power lines that touch the southeast corner of that. And then the power station actually has some water cooling lines that come from northeast plant that cross that, and both of those will stay on the site and they'll be protected by easements before we exchange the property. There's McKelvey Road in the circle that you can see there, kind of in the lower half of the parcel. Again, although it's a public road, it essentially has functioned as a local road to get in and out of the site for the city officials. We'll vacate McKelvey Road so that that public right-of-way is no longer public. The state, again, may or may not use it, but it won't have public access onto the parcel. So those are our five items. Again, we're trying to make the interstate site available. It's essentially an even trade of 300 acres for 300 acres. We think as the city council reviews this, after planning commission has had a chance to make their recommendation, then they'll actually make the final recommendation on the swap itself. But just to talk about it here, we do think that it aligns the parcels up with their proper use, so that Adams and Stevens Creek can have the residential growth and the industrial and public use area then can have the institutional use. Again, we have these 5 items in front of you today: the annexation, change of zone, comp plan amendment, the property surplus, and the McKelvey Road vacation. I don't know if I went through that too fast, but that's kind of what we have in front of you, and we'd ask for your support and your vote of approval on these. And I'm here with the rest of the team to help answer any questions that you might have.
What was the purpose for the city to, I assume, purchase that property in the first place? And did they have future plans for it?
So which property, the interstate site property?
Yes.
So solid waste would have purchased it decades and decades ago. Potentially it's just expansion usage for the future use of the landfill. I think at the time when they bought it, and I don't know the actual date, but they've owned it at least since the 70s or the 80s, this particular parcel. I think they just had the opportunity to purchase it and purchased it proactively. I think what's been interesting about solid waste operations with our increased recycling and increased composting, they get more and more efficient about how they're actually able to use the land, which is a good thing. And so they're going to be able to accommodate the growth of the landfill without this particular parcel with the remaining land that they have.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Is that a building right towards the center, in the top of your oval there, little rectangle?
That's an old lagoon.
Old lagoon, okay.
Been torn out since this picture was taken.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and have testimony and discussion on all of the 4.1 A through E. So let's go ahead and start with testimony in support. Do we have any testimony that is neutral? Do we have any testimony in opposition? Any other staff questions on the 5 items? And we won't have rebuttal, that's the same. Let's go ahead and entertain a motion then to close the public hearing.
I move to close public hearing.
Second?
Thank you. Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And may I have a motion? And we'll start with 4.1A.
I move to approve 4.1A Comprehensive Plan Amendment 24002.
Second.
And let's go ahead and discuss all of them, and then we'll go ahead and move forward as we go. Okay, who'd like to go first? Rich?
I think this is a good compromise as opposed to the original site plan, and I'm very happy that planning and the state could work out this trade, and it seems to be a good plan, and seeing no opposition here, I think it's probably going to be acceptable up the road and become reality.
Thank you.
I'll share that sentiment. I think based on our growth of Lincoln and where, Cahill Elementary School, and just, I think that growth is more fit for the east where we have that 300 acres we're swapping. So I think that's a really good decision and compromise. So bravo to all the teams that were on that work.
Okay, I share the sentiments of my fellow commissioners. I think that this is a good opportunity for the public to have input at the planning commission level, and it's valuable in the process, even though we did not see people come forward today. It's a great opportunity for them. Some of the things that the city did, which is really adds to the value of the property around, is utilizing that area for a buffer where the floodplain is a very nice feature, and adding all of the other public zoning for the current activities in place. And last but not least, appreciating the efforts of the city to prepare this property to become a usable property for the state and in the future. So thank you, everyone. Shelley, let's go ahead and move through the votes.
All right. Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
May I have a motion for 4.1B?
I move to approve 4.1B Comprehensive Plan Conformance 24005.
Second.
Thank you. Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
4.1C?
I move to approve 4.1C Annexation 24002.
Second.
Question.
We have a little bit more discussion here. Go ahead.
One question. So I know Gloria stepped out for 1B and A. Does she bring back for C or no?
She recused
She's
through
for-
A through E.
Oh, A through E.
She
Okay.
did all, but that's a good question, so thanks for asking.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move to the vote.
All right. Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
I move to approve 4.1D Change of Zone 24004.
Second.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
I move to approve 4.1E Street and Alley Vacation 24004.
Second.
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Also approved 6-0.
Thank you. At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
We are adjourned.